Welcome to the crew live. Everyone's here. We've got Rich, Warren, Matt, and Jim. On today's special with us, Frankie Lynn. We're going to have a great time chatting. It's the first time we've had a lady in the crew live. It's also the first time we've got a live audience. Let's hear a cheer from our live audience. We can't show our live audience on camera, though, because they failed to sign the release form today. We're working on that with our lawyers. So today our topics are going to be quite enjoyable. And we know Frankie Lynn is someone who's been a really model supporter of the LGBTQ2 community. And she's going to share with us some of her story, how she had this journey to become Frankie Lynn. But before we get started on that,
were you trying to figure out all the letters there, Rich?
Yeah, when I Googled today, I stopped at the first four.
Yeah.
So we'll get there later.
No, let's jump on it now. LGBTQ2. Who knows what it is?
I heard the two. I heard both ways.
Live audience knows the first one.
Well, of course we know the first four. Everybody, right? Of course.
Yeah, of course.
What's the Q?
The secret two is the two spirit of the indigenous community.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. You're familiar with that?
I didn't know that
It's actually been just
I
added
know
on
about the
recently.
two-spirit.
What's that have to do with
I
it?
didn't know that was in that.
You know what, Frankie? And I see some agencies and organizations add the two on to the LGBTQ, and others don't. So.
And even the Q doesn't go in all of them.
No.
Oh, right.
Most are LGBT.
That's
Wow.
usually where it stops.
Yeah.
Well, mugs up. Let's get a cheers
Right.
to start the crew live. Okay, cheers. Cheers. Get in there on that, Frankie, then.
Let's just stick to four.
This what?
Nothing.
Just the four,
Yeah,
which is
just the
good.
four. So,
It's getting complicated.
so
though.
today, as you all know, like we don't want to timestamp ourselves, but there was a horrific death of a 2-year-old in Florida. A lot's happened in Florida lately. But the 2-year-old was, how did that go? Who wants to throw in on that? It was an alligator or a crocodile in this.
I don't know the story at all, but
Is that right?
I'm really interested
So
to
you
hear
should
it.
tell it.
Now for the
That'd be most entertaining.
Actually, that would be awesome because at some point, if somebody could read that, I can't note from our producer.
Actually, I did know, producer, that it was an alligator. I just let Jim finish talking first.
Okay, and what's the
But,
difference between an alligator and a crocodile? Let's just get off track
Generally,
right away.
crocodiles are more aggressive. They have a longer snout, and they usually grow larger.
It's the longer
yeah.
instead of the wider.
Alligators have a larger snout. They're usually a smaller beast.
Okay.
But in this case, it was a 2-year-old that was wading in water that the 2-year-old shouldn't have been walking in. Apparently, the parents were from Nebraska. Yes, we're all sweating.
Draws a bone over here.
How do you guys not sweating?
That's why I took off my vest.
Yeah, that was
All right.
smart. I'm just melting.
Anyways, James.
Oh, sorry.
2-year-old.
Off topic.
Wading in the water.
Yeah.
Parents were from Nebraska. They did not have a respect for alligators or understanding, apparently, because there was in an area where it said you don't swim, but they apparently thought it was okay to wade in the water, walk in the water.
But can anybody tell me? Did it say don't swim like crocodile or alligator danger? Or did it just say don't swim?
On the news this morning, on CTV News, they were interviewing one of the police chiefs down there that was talking about. He said it was signed. That's no waiting, and it was signed that there were alligators. So.
Well, and the part of the story I heard was that this little guy got taken away. The dad tried to rescue it from the alligator,
Yeah, wrestled it,
and was injured in that, and was obviously unsuccessful. Media started talking about a child taken away and how it's unlikely, of course, that any child being. I think it was almost 20 hours when they started reporting that I heard. At that time, Mark, there's unlikely that there's going to be a child that's going to be rescued or safe. Yeah, a horrific event. And I mean, if you were those parents in Disneyland, you're with, I don't know if they had other children, but that their life is completely altered forever. They've lost their 2-year-old. Their holiday, which was supposed to be
It's
the
Disney
family.
World. It's Disney World. Yeah, it's
Oh
supposed
yeah,
to be.
it's supposed to be the dream vacation for all family.
Like this happened inside a theme park.
Yeah.
Yeah, on one of Disney's
I was
beaches.
saying that earlier. He just
Yeah.
kept refuting it.
So
I didn't
why,
refute it. I agreed with you.
Oh,
why
thank
are
you.
there?
Okay.
What business does Disney have, like having crocodiles?
Well, they
in
don't,
their
but
5-year-old.
unfortunately the water was connected
I
to
can't
the
read that,
wild
sorry.
water.
Oh, so it wasn't fenced off or anything.
Well, it is,
Just shout
but
it
the
out.
alligators and then get into the area.
Alligators
They
all
clear them
over.
out, but they can't guarantee it. That's
I
why
see.
the area was
Yeah.
off limits.
Okay, so they don't have a pond that's like an attraction.
No.
Come look at these big scary
No.
alligators.
They try.
like
They try to
ride
keep them out of
the
there. They just
alligator?
can't guarantee it because
Okay.
it hooks up to the
I
waterways
see.
of the rest of the state.
You know what's interesting? I'm not hearing anybody really indict the parents, not just on this panel, but so far out there in social media world. Often you'll see people start indicting parents right away because it's stupid parents. We should have been watching their child.
The table was set with the gorilla thing. So
Oh, yeah.
the social community learned that there's
Sure.
no point in trying to condemn the parents because it's
Excellent point.
yeah.
Yeah. So Disneyland closed down all of their beaches after that incident occurred. Horrific incident, and also in Orlando, we heard about the Pulse shooting that took place. We lost 49, I believe, from the Pulse Skate Bar, and it was a huge shock to the entire society, and particularly to the LGBTQ2 community. Did you hear any rumblings, Frankie Lynn, beyond what you would hear from people who aren't typically connected to the LGBTQ community?
No, but
No.
then again, I'm only connected mainly because I'm transgendered. Other than that, most of my friends are just people.
Just people.
some are gay, some are lesbian, some
Okay.
are straight.
Yeah.
I don't really worry about that.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. So, because it's born out of hatred towards people that may be lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender.
I wasn't aware that one of ISIS's agenda, because they're saying that it's tied to ISIS, are they not?
This guy, no, it's not tied directly to ISIS.
Okay.
You nod your head all you want, but
One of our
This
producers is
guy-
nodding her head.
this guy followed that lifestyle, that mentality, but he's not connected directly.
Okay.
It's just he.
So
doesn't
ISIS
wanna be-
inspired is the way they usually call
ISIS
those.
Yeah.
inspired.
Yeah.
That's a good
He
way to
doesn't
say
have
it.
his membership.
He doesn't have a
badge.
membership
Okay,
card.
he
No.
doesn't
He,
subscribe to
he
the
had
newsletter.
no connections to them except for he was
And-
inspired by them.
Yes, and that's what I believe as well. Just if you watch the Facebook and you hear the stories about it, the guy that did it, was also a frequenter at the bar. Frequenter? Can you say
He,
frequenter?
he was there.
Frequenter at the bar, yeah.
And he
That was no prompting.
So
at
if this
all.
is my point of view on this one, is if he's got this very strict religious belief that this is a horrible thing to do, but he's got this natural drive,
Well,
this
I
genetic
think-
drive, he can't help himself. That's who he is.
I think
he
that's
is
part of the reason
snapped.
why he snapped on it.
Yeah.
Right.
He just hates himself, so he went and tried to kill everybody, saying, "I
Well,
hate you all. It's not
That's
my
why he
fault."
went into something that he knew he probably wouldn't survive
Yeah.
from. Because he couldn't bring himself to commit suicide, but at the same time, he couldn't bring himself to stop, and he felt it was wrong.
Now when you
messed
said
up.
that he, so it wasn't a mass shooting and then a suicide. The police.
The
took
police
him
ended up
down.
having to
took him
shoot
out.
him.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were any police injured in the process, or
I haven't heard of any,
Actually,
so
I
I
didn't
don't
hear any
know.
police.
so at that point it was suicide by cop?
Basically.
Okay. So he
And when-
did what he felt he should do, and then they swiftly took care
Well, I
of
heard
him.
it was a 3-hour process.
Right.
He was in
Oh,
there
okay.
for 3
He
hours.
got in there
thought-
at 2:02 and started
He didn't
firing.
step
It
in
wasn't
front of a
until
gun.
Oh, okay. I
Still-
thought that maybe
yeah.
it was just.
No, he didn't just walk out with an empty gun and
Okay.
pretend he's no.
Okay.
It wasn't until about 5 in the morning where the police actually
So I'm
took
just
him down.
curious because it was literally after I almost started crying and trying to empathize with those families and those people and the fear that they would have went through. The next thing that went through my mind is, how did this guy do this for 3 hours? Is it just me who has the hero complex, or did anybody else think right away? Like, my mentality would be immediately protect my friends and family, my wife, whoever I'm with, and then I would be instantly trying to look for an opportunity to take this guy down. That'd be my thought process.
Make a plan.
Yeah, like
I don't know how that was possible in there though. It's a large crowded bar, and for the first probably 15, 20 people shot, they wouldn't even know what happened. There's loud noises. What's the loud noises?
Well,
People
according to
hitting
one of
the
the
get that.
survivors they interviewed, basically all anyone knew at first what was happening is there was gunshots and people started falling over.
Yeah.
yeah.
By the time they realized what was happening, because he was using such rapid-fired weapons, he had already basically done most of the casualties, and most of the people were just trying to lay low because he was shooting anything that moved.
At
Well-
which point, I noticed our producers pointed out it became a hostage situation as well.
Yeah.
And that's when the cops.
That's why the
little
cops
wall
took so
busted
long.
in with their.
I get that, but
round
I don't know.
ones
For
rather.
3 hours, I'm just curious if anybody
Well-
even looked for an opportunity. So many obstacles in a bar, pillars, bars to hide behind. I don't know much about weapons. I don't know much about this situation.
He
I
was
assume
they
that
said he
there
was walking around the room shooting anything that moved.
I assume that there would have been at some point he would have had to stop and reload. Like,
Which
So-
even
so-
if someone was wounded and moved a bit, he shot them again.
Yeah.
But I think I understand your point. Like Homeland Security now, they've got actually some training videos out for offices and small organizations, and it talks about if a shooter comes into your bank, this is how to not only barricade your room, but they get to the final step of this is what to do to try to fight back.
Yeah.
They talk about getting fire extinguishers or chairs or anything big and blunt or big and sharp, and you know if the shooter's coming down your hallway, going to come into your office next, that you can prep yourself to whack
So
that
did
son
that
of a
cross
bitch.
anybody else's mind?
So
Just to do
it did to
something,
me.
yeah.
It did. Like if there were a shooter coming here and we're all running, maybe somebody's back here and they can come from behind. I did cross my mind. Why don't some people? Is it going to become common for people to think I want to sneak up on this bastard from behind when he's shooting those people? And
Yeah, when you
Or
know what
Russia.
the end result can be now, you learn more and more what the end result can be. I don't know, again, chronologically, like if all 49 people were murdered in the first 5 minutes or if it took 3 hours before, you know, the last couple dozen were. But the biggest hero that I'm hearing about in this whole situation is somebody who opened a door. Like,
to let people out, or
to
what?
let people out. Yeah, there's a gentleman who was ex-military, and he found some people huddled by a door, and they were so frozen in fear that they didn't open the door.
Wow.
And he literally reached around them and opened the door, and then they ran out the back.
Wow.
And he's a hero.
That's a good state of
I
mind.
mean,
Probably
that is-
saved
yeah.
some lives. So yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the
for
fear is
sure.
paralyzing, obviously.
Yeah,
and-
well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
We're paralyzed.
But yeah, I don't know if maybe the opportunity wasn't there. It's like Franklin was saying, if everybody's scattered on the ground, hiding out, this guy's just walking around, oh, there's movement, bang, there's movement, bang. And you're
Yeah.
waiting, movement, bang. You don't have that opportunity. Maybe a couple people did have the opportunity, but they didn't have.
Yes.
Well, the one
The right
survivor
state
that
of
they
mind.
interviewed about that, he actually got shot a few times.
Yeah.
Oh,
But even when he got shot, he didn't move, which is why he didn't get a killing shot, most likely.
interesting. Yeah, it's horrific. It's as you know, the largest shooting in United States history, mass terrorist shooting. It's a homeborn or homegrown terrorism act. They're calling it now, and I don't know if it'll ever be unraveled.
So I don't think it's a terrorism act. Still, I think it's more of a hate crime. I wouldn't call this terrorism. Still,
Well,
he might have an ideology of ISIS mentality, but this was not
Wasn't an
an
ISIS
ISIS
sanctioned.
No,
So-
they didn't have his card.
Matt, I agree.
It wasn't just.
Terrorism
Like,
might
we
get
can-
overused,
I don't even know
but
what that
you know
means.
what? Why not throw ISIS into the mix just in case America ever needs another excuse to just act on something? Might
Okay.
as well tag it terrorism also.
And Homeland Defense, Homeland Security has made homegrown terrorism an actual category. I agree, terrorism gets used too much. Okay, we want to just go to our live audience and you
I wouldn't understand that term. That
throw,
had.
just call it, what are you trying to articulate
see.
to us,
What is it?
producers?
Well, do you know
He
what
had a
Tinder
Grindr
is?
account, CNN reported.
So
What
the
is-
Grinder account, a Grinder account is it's a
And he was-
homosexual website, and you go on there to get hookups with other homosexual
Specifically male.
homosexual
oriented,
males.
but
Yeah.
He was making friends with women, transgender women, on this account, and they found out actually that his wife was with him when he bought the assault weapons.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, she's
So,
going down too.
they
in
don't
some way,
know
shape, or
how-
form.
well,
They don't know if he was maybe gay and had hatred towards himself, or whether
yeah, like Frankie
this
Lynn
was,
mentioned.
this was ISIS ideology influencing him.
Like Frankie Lynn mentioned, yeah, he may have had this underlying self-loathing and decided to act out because he wasn't able to take his own life and put himself in a position where he's going to end the lives of those he hates when he's really hating himself. And it's a horrible tragedy. Our heart goes out to everyone who lost someone and is impacted by that. And it is literally millions of people who are impacted.
Oh, that'd be a big
Yeah.
spread down from there. Everybody
Oh,
knows
yeah.
everybody,
Yeah.
family, friends. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just spend 2 minutes before we talk to Frankie Lynn about the journey you've been on in the last how many years? I don't know how old you are, so I'm not going to ask you that question. That's the one question we're not going to ask is how old
Man.
you are, because everybody wants to know, Jim, are you really 32? No, I'm 35. So
Okay,
And you
making
look
me
really
feel
bad
old.
for 35, though.
it's all the drinking and smoking.
All right.
So,
We don't condone smoking here.
but we are soon going to have a cigar and bourbon show. So the cigar smoking, is that not
Cigar-
smoking?
I meant tonight.
Okay. Okay, so actually, let's launch into some of your story, Frankie Lynn. What if there were a transgender who was running for some office? I don't even know if that's occurred in any of our political realms.
There is some transgenders who have made it into the politics in
Oh, is that
Canada.
right?
Yeah.
Really?
I don't
Yeah,
remember their
gays and
names offhand,
lesbians,
but I
they
remember that they were running for some of the parties and they actually got some seats in Parliament. So
Oh, that's nice to hear. Did they stay in office for an extended time, or do you know if
I'm
they're
not even
still-
sure if they're currently in office. I just remembered seeing it and going, "Oh, okay."
Okay, so for our recorded audience, we're going to Google that and we're going to put the pictures up when we do our editing so you can see who those folks are in Canada. And in the USA, I highly doubt there's been any.
I would doubt that
Trend.
very
I
strongly.
haven't heard of any in the States.
Yeah, right. Okay, so to that point, I'm not saying you might just vote for a transgender individual right out the gate, but is it fair to use transgender when defining your journey, that you were considered a
For me,
transgender?
I think it's completely fair. Some transgendered would not.
Why do they prefer not?
Some transgendered prefer to hide.
Oh, well, and that would be
Well,
because they don't want the hate.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so the hate. I met Frankie Lynn at her workplace in Saskatoon, and it was a few years back. We talked about being on a radio show I used to run with my wife, and then Frankie Lynn was gracious enough to come on the Crew Live, again being our first female guest, and we decided when we ran the Crew Live, just so the audience knows and you know, we don't talk about sports. It's an all-male crew, the hosts, and we are allowed to have female guests. That's part of it.
But only as guests.
Oh, yeah, is that misogynistic?
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, cheers.
And the peanut gallery can be female.
Hey,
And the peanut gallery.
and the
I mean the
and the
producers.
live studio audience / producers. Okay, so I just want to ask you about the hate because we mentioned that just for a bit. And guys, jump in with questions anytime.
Actually, I was just
You've
been talking pretty
going
steady.
Like 100 miles an hour.
So
here. You're not
we
giving
haven't
us
really
much room.
taken a
Yeah.
breath.
You got to jump in.
You got to take a breath, man. You're gonna pass out soon.
Yeah.
You're talking really fast.
You're,
Okay,
with
Frankie,
the
when
live
did it all
studio
begin? I
audience,
am
you're
just
feeling
curious. When
pressure
did you?
to really carry
Yeah,
things.
you're right.
When
When
did
you-
it begin? As in when did I realize that I was different, or
Yeah.
when did I
Well,
decide
I
to
mean,
actually do something about it?
As a kid, we all think we're a bit different. But when did you like? I really am different.
Far back as I can remember.
Like right from the get go.
I always wanted to be more like the girls. But growing up, I always thought I couldn't be.
Yeah.
And that it was wrong.
That's
And
what
since
you
when
were
I was
taught,
growing
yeah.
up, there was no real internet. It wasn't really something you could easily look up or find out.
So you had no support base whatsoever.
And
Different
then by the
mentality.
time the internet became common and I had internet, I was old enough but already thought I knew. So I never really thought to look it up.
Yeah.
And I tried living the role I thought everyone wanted of me,
Which was male.
which was very definitely me because I was the firstborn.
Oh. How many siblings do you have?
I have 4 sisters and 1 brother.
Okay, yeah. That's an interesting.
It's a big
And
family.
it was
So a
my
Catholic family, I'm
responsibility-
guessing then.
No.
No. Oh, okay.
My dad's an atheist and my mom's non-denominational.
And
or she
how did
was.
how
You
did they
were
handle the
close.
situation? Close. Yeah.
When they originally found out, they tried forbidding me from dressing as female anywhere in town or anywhere any of their friends might see me.
It's always good to forbid. Yeah. It's good.
It didn't go. It didn't go far. I just agreed with them and then continued doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah.
So being the oldest, you kind of had that privilege of pushing back against your parents.
No, being oldest growing up, I was always held up as an example to my siblings and always was expected to follow the rules.
Oh.
And I was very good at following the rules.
But then you hated yourself because you were following the rules
Well-
and you weren't being yourself, or
What I hated was the fact that I didn't really like myself.
yeah.
The older I got and the longer I went with hiding that part of myself.
And you realize life is short. We should do what we need to do.
More like I finally decided to try and see how much I really wanted that kind of thing by on Halloween dressing up as a female.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
And then
And
didn't want to stop.
may I ask, what age was this at? That you
Late
first
20s.
in the 20s, late 20s?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's been like the transgender talk has been so much more predominant the last few years. This has been.
If I had
in
grown
your
up
life
with this
or-
kind of stuff, I would have probably come out as a teenager
Yeah,
because I would between internet and how common it is talked about.
right.
I would have definitely have stopped trying to hide it from myself, let alone everybody else.
So is there anybody that you would say just completely turn the switch for you? Like that person has motivated me to the point or inspired me to the point where I'm doing this.
No, it just got more to the point that I was starting to hate myself so much that I had to do something.
Yeah.
And you feel better now?
Oh, I like myself.
That's
Nice.
that's important.
That's the first start.
I don't think I've
Dessert.
seen you stop smiling the whole hour you've been here. So I.
But
you see
Rich,
the
we're
joy.
pretty awesome though. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see the joy.
We're,
I missed that, but I'm sure it was.
We're
you said
awesome.
we're pretty awesome, so
Oh,
why wouldn't you
okay.
smile?
why wouldn't you?
Yeah. So the hate that you received from people was you felt it when you were a little. Franklin, I think, was your
I was
birth
born
name.
Franklin.
Okay, and you decided you wanted to be female, and your family started pushing back. Did that feel like hate to you?
I
or-
didn't tell them right away that it was female. I just let them know I was cross-dressing.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how far I was willing to go at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I knew I couldn't stay just being male.
So when you go to tell your therapist, counselor, or doctor, how did they say, yeah, you know what, Franklin, I see you are female, and I'm going to support you in pursuing this journey?
Well, first of all, I went for about a year, basically researching on my own, learning as much as I could on my own, and making certain it was truly what I wanted before I went to see the family doctor, who also had to be a counselor.
I see.
Had to be a counselor.
Well, she was a counselor as
Okay,
well, which
yes.
is why the reason why I went to see her.
All right.
Yeah.
She happened to, I lucked out, and she happened to be school chum with one of the two people in Alberta who were required to get the surgery paid for by the government.
Oh.
So she asked him to take me as a patient, even though he wasn't taking new patients, and he did.
Right.
So for about the next 18 months, I had to travel to Edmonton at least once a month to see him, and
And that was hormone therapy?
nope,
Or-
I was getting hormones therapy from my doctor,
Okay, alright.
but that was for counseling to make certain that I was actually a legit
Mm.
Yeah. And committed.
and committed.
Committed is a big
And
part of it, yes.
As long as I passed, went through all the hoops, the government paid for the surgery, which they did.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
awesome.
perfect.
Good to know.
The old Canada.
Now, federal government, the provincial government.
Provincial. Alberta at the
Alberta.
time listed it as a required surgery.
How did you get into the provincial Alberta government then?
Well, I
Being a
grew up in
Saskatchewan.
Alberta.
Oh, okay. There you go. Thank you. didn't
I
know
was
that.
born in BC, grew up in Alberta, and now live here.
All right.
So you. Oh, go ahead, Rich.
No, you go ahead.
The surgery you mentioned, I know our viewers are going to be asking, what's the surgery? Did you have a penis that was removed and turned into vagina and clitoris? Did you have breast implants? And
I never bothered with implants.
Okay.
I used hormones, and
yeah,
I didn't get very big, but they're there.
definitive breasts,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
For the surgery I went for, though, it was a penile inversion surgery.
Right.
Which
I've heard of
means
that,
it
yeah.
wasn't actually cut off, it was actually put up inside and turned into a vagina.
That's extraordinary.
That is amazing.
Reorganized a bit, of course.
Re-
I would say a bit, yeah.
So
Now we have to ponder this for a second.
yeah, so it's called penile inversion surgery.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question for you. You know, we talked earlier. I asked what your sense of humor is like.
Dry, usually.
Yeah. Okay. So, I grew up, and my wife grew up. Actually, we grew up with a gentleman who, hope I get this straight. He kind of felt like you did in high school, and then he, I'm not sure if he had the full surgery to switch. Yeah, the full meal deal to turn himself into female, but now he is a lesbian. So he
The
had
body you identify with has nothing to do with your sexual orientation.
yeah. So what?
I never heard of that. Like the body, say that again so I
The
can
body you
digest and then
have
we'll let
has
Rich continue.
nothing to do with your
Well,
orientation.
look at Bruce Jenner though. He still, or Caitlyn Jenner now, but he still likes women. Thank you. My God. She still
as we
likes
go.
women,
We learned as
but
we go. Thanks, Rich.
has gone full woman himself, just no surgery on that case.
Not necessarily.
Warren, throw in here
No, he
anytime.
hasn't done
I know
surgery,
you understand this better
but-
than some of us.
Well, I don't know if that's true. I'm waiting for the opportunity to shift topics a little bit, but this is really interesting, so I want to see how this.
Okay, so how this goes. Okay, okay.
You got
So
an
my
angle you want?
question was, because I like to push the envelope a little bit sometimes, I'm just curious. This gentleman, he switched to a female, but then he was a lesbian, so he's still with women. I'm just curious.
Sorry.
She still.
What was that?
She, because
I got the same thing, so
Yeah.
he has to do it to you now.
Yeah, they.
Oh,
She's still with.
Once
Oh.
you transition, the pronoun has to change.
It's just
Right.
well, I'm referencing somebody that I'll probably never see again.
It's complicated, but
no
yeah.
disrespect
Sorry.
to them. Okay, let's move on.
no. Get
we
to your
gotta finish
point.
it.
This is good.
No, I'm
No.
getting the shake head from the
No.
viewing
No,
audience.
the viewing audience is just approving
Video-
by their shaking head. If you
That just means
if you
do
can
it.
shut me down from talking
Do
a
it.
mile a minute and let you guys ask questions,
I
then
wanna
you
hear
got to
what this
keep hearing.
Rich-
I want to hear the rest of this question.
Well,
This
it's just
is
a two-part question.
Yeah, I know.
Do you prefer men or women at this point? Did you switch because you wanted to be with men or women? Or,
I'm more towards the asexual part, which means I don't have a strong sex drive. But when I do find someone attractive, after I get to know them, it's usually a man.
So who's the best looking on the couch here?
I don't know any of you well enough for that. For me, physical beauty doesn't mean much.
Yeah.
We felt like it did a minute ago, but now it kind of
We
broke.
felt like it.
I don't get turned on until I know someone fairly well.
Man,
Unfortunately, all the guys I've gotten turned on by have always been in serious relationships, so...
oh,
Good for you. That's an excellent
That's a
answer. Good
tough
question
thing,
too.
So
Okay, who all feels awkward by a show of hands? Down
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
I feel lucky.
No? Okay, good.
I feel a little shut down by
Yeah,
that.
I feel. Yeah,
Just my mate.
yeah, that's right.
Because we're sweating, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's just,
your charms have no power here, Rich.
So
Sorry, Warren.
what's happened since you transitioned with your family? How's the acceptance been?
My family has gotten pretty good at accepting.
Yeah, that's good.
They still have issues once in a while, but it's a normal thing. They're very accepting and very supportive.
That's good. They kind of have to be committed to it now. I mean, you're still their child, and
Not necessarily. Some people who transition lose their families.
that's
And
a
that's one of the
messed
reasons
up.
I waited so long before transitioning and before I decided to tell my family. Because I wasn't sure what would happen when I told them.
And why do you think it's more accepted now? Like we know,
In part
my
because
children know
more
somebody
people
by
know
grade
about it.
7. By grade 7, this boy was dressing up and changed his name to a girl name in grade 7 already.
I think that's
and the
a bit
other
early
kids
myself.
accepted, and the other kids accepted
But at the same time, kids at that age should be allowed to explore that kind of thing.
that. Yeah.
Sure.
That's the only way they're going to learn.
Did you ever have any religious content influence your choices or your
I
desires or
am
feelings?
religious, but my belief of religion doesn't match most organized religion. And therefore, I didn't really worry about what they said about it.
Understandable.
Religion's mostly disorganized anyways. So, you know,
I think
they don't want
religion
to
is
do
mostly personal. You shouldn't have to follow the church exactly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, most churches would disagree with me on that.
Yeah.
Especially the Catholics.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir here, to use some church euphemisms. And in fact, if we look at the religious content, and I just got to address this, when we look at the biblical references to homosexuality, sodomy,
This would be Jim's specialty, by the way. So.
effeminate behaviors and activities, all the terminology that's been brought in by the Catholic Bible writers was not understood the same by the apostles and the Hebraic people of the first century and previous to that. So anytime there's a reference to anti-gay stuff or anti-homosexual activities, it's always in referring to people doing it under duress, drug-induced abuse of it, sexual abuse against children, and the sex cults that were so prolific in that period. If we were a male sex cult, I might force Warren to have sex with me under the
By the
influence
way,
of-
now you know why you're here. Surprise!
I'm just gonna say that you guys just picked the best looking guy.
Man.
You just picked the best. Yeah. Nonetheless,
Just
so
the youngest,
it's under
just the youngest.
force. I would have done all the admonishments against that type of sexual activity. It comes out in our English language as the words homosexual now in the New Testament, for instance. So I've got a very kind of deep and compelling argument against the religious argument against homosexuality, transgenders, gays,
I've
lesbians.
got a few different copies of the Bible, and one of them I have is basically it's sort of a scholar's type one, and what it does is it shows in the actual passage the most accepted meaning that most people mean by it.
Right.
But underneath, it a lot of times will reference that in the original language, a lot of times this phrase would mean multiple different things, and here's some of the other possible meanings that it could have meant that just are not the ones that most people are accepting it to mean, and sometimes it can change quite a bit.
So that's helpful.
Oh, it is, which is why I like that one the best of the different versions I have.
Maybe you should write a book on this, Jim.
We can do it together, Warren. Seems how you're the best looking. Your picture can go on the front.
Man. All right,
get
Franklin,
you
so
flowing, yeah.
nowadays everything's all right? You're pretty smooth, or you still have a lot of problems or something?
I don't have much in the way of problems. For the most part, I have lots of friends now, more than I had when I was growing up even.
Because you feel better about yourself now, so you're probably more confident, or?
Also because I fit in better with the type of people who I want to be friends with. As a kid, I was trying to be friends with the guys, and most of the time I didn't understand them.
Yeah.
It's hard to make many friends when you don't understand their motivation.
Well, that's why we don't talk sports here, because we don't really understand that.
Warren, do you understand sports?
I've seen sports. I've heard the word sports. So how long did it take from the first time that you stepped into a counselor's room or the first time that you got a hormone treatment to when you considered it, the process is done.
Well, the process is never done. It's always ongoing.
Is that right?
The hormones are always ongoing then?
Well, I have to be on them for the rest of my life
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
One of the downsides of getting the surgery is my body doesn't produce enough hormones of any type
Mm.
to maintain my bone density.
I see.
Oh.
So if I don't take hormones of some type, I could end up having osteoporosis.
And is that a daily, weekly? Like
I
how-
take daily pills.
Okay.
But there are injections you could get that were weekly, and there's other things that you could get that could be implanted in that would give you hormones continually for like a 6-month-year period.
Hmm.
But the pills are one of the safer, easier ones.
Oh yeah.
Do you watch Orange Is the New Black?
I haven't. It's on my list. I keep
Okay,
intending
yeah.
to. But
Yeah, because there's a hoot from our audience, live audience out there. But on Orange Is the New Black, one of the inmates is transgender, and she's a marvelous actress. And they cut off her estrogens or her hormone therapy in prison, and she begins to return to some of the. It's really not noticeable. Her male features start to develop again.
Well, if she hadn't had the surgery, then the hormones that her body produces would be more to the masculine when they're stopped.
Right.
When you're getting the female hormones, your body looks to produce a certain amount of hormones.
Yeah.
So if you're getting estrogen, your body might cut back on its production of testosterone. But even if it doesn't, if you're getting estrogen, enough of it, you can overpower it to an extent.
You know, one of our previous shows on the Crew Live, we talked about menstruation versus menstruation, where we discussed a bit of the male hormone cycle in contrast to the female hormone cycle. And both of them are fairly dramatic. It's interesting. I can't help but educate just for a minute here, and if not just for the people in the room, but for the audience. There's a male-female gender differentiation that takes place in utero. And you probably know all this, Frankie Lynn. But we're all basically females when we were first conceived.
Man.
Yeah,
Shout out.
And being females, at one point, there's a hormone bath that goes over the brain that the testes and the adrenal glands, which also produces estrogen and testosterone, are triggered to produce the amounts we need to either turn our clitoris and labia into a penis and scrotum, or to continue developing it into a.
There's
a
actually
labia
a few
vagina.
different times in the development that it has to happen.
Right.
One is for that type of trigger, but one of them is also for the mental,
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So then, if
which is where they figure a lot of the transgender might come from. The bath may not have hit them at the right time,
so to be
so the mental part may not have developed the way it was supposed to.
So when little Jimmy's in mama's womb and he's in 60 days gestation, I should be getting a testosterone bath over my brain, but it may be less testosterone and more estrogen. Is that possibly what they're...
Or the testosterone bath might have come, but a little bit too late, and your brain might have started developing a little too much to the female side,
Yeah.
and therefore you're more like a two-spirited type.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You're not quite male, you're not quite female in your brain.
Interesting. And
Which would explain also a lot of the gays and lesbians in some ways.
right, yeah, why they have
Because
that.
it's not all by raising. Some of it is genetic / hormonal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and some of the research has shown that when they try to persuade young Franklins to behave like boys, they've come up with psychotherapy to cause that person or young Jimmys to behave like a boy. And then in my pubescent years, when more hormones are more active, the brain gets new baths again, and then they definitively state, no, Jimmy, you're not a boy, you're a female. And that's why we're seeing a lot of adolescents now come out. A lot of people are suggesting that adolescents are just jumping onto this bandwagon because it's cool to be transgender, or
Some of them might be.
Well,
Which is
maybe.
why the therapy is so serious.
sure, but isn't it possibly the case?
Most of them probably are just more aware of it.
Exactly.
But
So
it's
being
more
more
accepting nowadays, so we can allow it to experiment
And yes, they
a
don't
bit.
hide. They don't hide as much. Therefore, like when I was growing up, they called transgendered fake genders usually.
Fake genders?
Yeah.
Did you say? Okay.
Most transgendered I'd hear from my friends and family were fake females or fake males.
Hmm.
I've
So
heard
that
that
was
term.
part of the
No.
reason why I took so long
That's-
to look into it after I grew up and got internet, because I had been hearing that all my
That
life.
doesn't feel very supportive.
It wasn't. But back then, that kind of thing really wasn't talked about that much, and when it was,
Sure.
So is that literally, you think, the last hurdle for you to make the full transition was you finally had the support of the world around you, the family around you?
No, my
Was it-
last hurdle was just making up my mind. What do I want, and stop worrying about what other people wanted.
Yeah.
How tough was that though to commit to that?
That's why it took
do
me
you
so
not
long.
second guess yourself every
I did.
day? Yeah.
I did. right up to when I went for the surgery. I was still second guessing myself once in a while.
And right after the surgery, did you go holy shit, or you were like,
But after the surgery, I was in cloud 9, and
Alright.
therefore I wasn't questioning anything. I was just so happy.
opiates are good? Yes, yeah.
Who went with you to the surgery? Did you have
I
some
flew
support?
it by myself, but my dad, my brother, and my brother's girlfriend did come on and visit me while I was out in surgery, which was
Mr.
in
T.
Quebec.
Mr. T was there.
Yep.
Your father, Mr. I've been waiting the whole episode to say that. We're not.
That is
we
what
don't
he goes
use last
by.
names, so Mr. T.
Yeah,
Her dad is Mr. T.
he goes by that, does he?
Yes.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
My dad actually goes by Mr. T. Lots of his friends actually, that's what they call him.
Wow.
Does he happen to have an afro and a lot of gold chains? And...
No.
Oh.
But he does try to look like Elvis once in a while.
Oh.
And one of his brothers is an Elvis impersonator.
Oh, awesome.
If Mr. T has a Facebook page, I'm going to grab a picture and I'm going to put it on this episode so you can see this Elvis. Does he have a Facebook page, your dad?
Yes, he does.
Oh, you'll see him then. Before we started shooting, you talked about your mom as well. At the time, she decided to accept your choice.
When she finally truly accepted what I was doing and that it was for the best for me and that I wasn't hurting anybody, that was the night she died.
Oh.
She asked me to if I was willing to let her help pick out the new name, and I had been waiting to legally change my name for hopefully that she would come to accept it.
That is something.
And so I agreed to, which is part of the reason I went from Franklin to Frankie-Lynn. I was trying to keep my name as similar as possible, in part for my nieces and nephews, make it easier for them, but in part because she wasn't there to help pick it out, and she did pick out the first name.
And out of respect to your mother, yeah, that's nice.
Also, to honor my godmother and my aunt, whose name, when she was growing up, most of her friends called her Frankie.
Okay.
Her name was Fran, but her friends were mostly guys.
That is a very sweet memory of your mom the night she passed. She finally fully accepted.
Not to say she wasn't accepting before that, she just wasn't 100% accepting
Yeah.
before that.
Well, I think it'd be pretty challenging too. So,
It was.
especially for older people. Like
Actually,
one
not
generation
necessarily,
back.
because my grandparents knew over a year before my parents did.
Really?
Yeah.
And they were
I knew
good?
they would have no problem with it, and I was right. They had no problem with it. In fact, first thing my parents told me when I told them is I couldn't tell my grandparents because they would have a problem with it because they thought the same thing. I had to tell them my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents all knew like a year before you did. They all just weren't saying anything because I requested them not to until I figured out how to tell you. It took a while for me to figure out how to tell them.
Yeah, you didn't know how they were going to respond.
Well, I knew that the initial response would be negative just because it would be a shock.
Sure. Yeah.
So how did you choose to do it? Was there a big reveal or was it a...
More of
awkward
my
talk,
mom
or-
asked me to come straight to their place after work one day, and I, was already transitioning. And I
Oh.
still hadn't actually told them.
Hmm.
So when I came there, I came straight from work wearing the full outfit that I was wearing.
Yeah.
And?
Female clothing.
And that's when it came out, and they were not happy to find out I was disobeying their orders not to dress female around town.
The orders, hey? Good for you.
They can't really fight that though. That's just
I was adult, I could do what I wanted. I didn't have to
That's
follow,
true.
and I wasn't living at their house anymore. I had my own place.
Yeah.
So do you encounter the atrocities of the hatred in some of your interactions at work or on the street in your social circles?
Nothing as bad as you hear about in the media.
Oh, okay.
Most of my friends, when I started transitioning, basically told me never to talk to them again.
really.
Oh.
Yeah. They
And
didn't want
did-
anything to
did
do
they
with me
stick to
unless I
that?
stopped
Can
transitioning.
you name names?
I could, but I'm not
No.
going
Oh,
to.
jeez, because we'll get a hold of them.
And did all your friends stick to that, or did some come back to you later?
I made new friends, and
You lost your old friends?
pretty much two of a person.
Wow.
Really?
The only ones I still have are ones that were family friends.
That's hard to believe, actually. I would think
Ones that
someone
weren't
would
just
still
my
be your
friends, but were family friends.
I
They're the
know.
ones I still have.
Sure, they were connected to the...
But you think if they were your friends, they would still stick with you?
As far as they were concerned, I lied to them all my life.
That's
Slash, I wasn't the person that they thought they knew.
That was their excuse for being weak
Yeah.
and walking away.
That's bizarre.
Plus, of course, when they told me that, I didn't try that hard to keep them. I went and found new friends.
You know it was going to be a struggle all the way through.
Well, I figured I could use more supportive friends than ones that were telling me to
Not-
stop mentioning that I was female.
Yeah, such selfish friends.
Yeah. Well, your story is really amazing, and am heartened to hear you haven't experienced much hate, Frankie.
Actually, I've experienced less since I started transitioning than I did before I started transitioning.
Really?
Why do you figure that?
Because I figure what I'm supposed to be.
Right.
As a guy, I didn't know how to be a guy. I didn't understand guys. And therefore, a lot of things that I've since learned now about guy rituals, I didn't respond properly.
Well, Frankie Lynn, if you subscribe to The Crew Live at facebook.com/The Crew Live, you can watch all of our all-male episodes and understand guys.
Yeah, I'll still don't understand that.
And the website is thecrewlive.co in case you want to go there and keep up with the all-male thing. Well, we're a bunch of males that had varied understanding of the transgender plight, life, and transition, and it's so helpful to hear from you. And I know a lot of people encounter you as they go through your workplace here in our area. Hopefully that you get a good response for those that see this, because I know people have questions, right? Like the first time I met you, Frankie Lynn, I remember your badge said Frankie at the workplace, and then 2 weeks, because we go twice a month to freaking Costco. Sorry.
Edit.
Yeah.
They're not paying us, so
No.
edit that out.
It's easy to edit that out. So, and then it said Frankie Lynn, and I had questions about how things are going for you, because I guess my concern was I was worried that people were going to treat you wrongly because you were different than what they would want you to be.
No, I find most people who I encounter in my day-to-day life, especially since I moved to Saskatoon, are actually more of a, it's not hurting me, I'm not going to hurt them.
Right.
Yes, I've been informed that work does get lots of complaints about me and the way I dress and how could they let me dress that way or how can they let me do this or that. But to my face, most of them are polite.
Okay.
How you dress at work? I don't understand.
Well, they don't
I've
like
seen
the
you
fact
there,
that I'm
and I've
wearing
never-
feminine clothes. They want me to wear masculine clothes.
But it's not
as they're
revealing
concerned-
clothes. You're not showing off your
Nope.
bits or anything. So.
But they don't think it's right that I'm wearing feminine clothes.
But
you're a female, so it shouldn't
Yes,
be
I
an
am.
issue, right?
But as far as they're concerned, I'm not.
Yeah, they don't know that.
is your workplace good enough to just dismiss those claims out of
Oh,
hand?
yeah.
Okay, good.
As far as they're concerned, it's none of their business. It's completely internal and it has nothing to do with them. Therefore, and I'm not violating any of the dress codes.
No.
So
So do you see a day in our future where everybody just accepts without question somebody is this, somebody's that, somebody's that?
with the way society's going, I figure it will happen.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it'll happen soon.
Right.
I don't.
I'm hoping it will, but I
don't
doubt
agree
it.
with you. I think it's more generally approved that way, but there's always bigotry and
Well, there's always going to be
the
some.
small. There's always
But
numbers.
it's already getting more to the point where if a bigot opens their mouth, they're more likely to be shot down than supported now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In a lot of
someone steps
topics.
up. Yeah, for sure.
Not everything, but it used to be the other way around
Yeah.
in a lot of areas, and it's switching. And
So you came from a small town beforehand. You said as well, like
Yeah, I grew up in Hannah.
Oh yeah, tiny. Wow, that would be really tough for you then, for sure.
And on top of that, I was a new kid. I was one of the smallest in the grade. And my first day of school, I had grade sixers picking on me when I was in grade 1.
Name names.
I don't know their names.
We're gonna find the middle bastards.
I deliberately didn't remember their names.
Okay. Okay, let me just pause here. You've given us a lot to think about. I want to know if we have any questions from our audience before we move on. We might close and let you go right away, but there might be a few more questions. Anybody got something?
While you think, I'll just say Frankie Lynn, I'm sorry.
Frankie's fine. Most of my friends call me Frankie.
Yeah, so I'm sure there was a lot of shame involved that you may have felt that people directed at you over the decades, and I'm really glad to see that you overcame that. Shame is a crippler,
Definitely.
and you have to be true to yourself, and you are an inspiration to people in general.
Don't try, but
Yeah, so just continue on with that. The way I see it, at some point, hopefully the world will be, rather than gay, lesbian, transgender, black, white, there's only two groups of people, penises and vaginas. So you're not in a majority or a minority, you're in a group of 50%. 50%. You're not in the 1 percentile or the 3 percentile, you're just,
I think the world's heading that way.
yeah.
And if we were allowed to talk about sports in the Crew Live, we could have easily gotten over that emotional moment.
Yeah. Actually, I got over the emotional moment with one
But we don't talk about
little obscure question, little graphic. Was it ridiculously painful for like a long time after the surgery? Like that's very invasive surgery.
It is, and for a month I wasn't allowed to be on my feet for very long.
Oh my God.
So I couldn't not be on my feet. So I had to get up and walk around for a little bit here, and then I had to sit down for a while, because if I was on my feet too long, it got too painful. But I was also on some good painkillers during that
I
time.
would think so. Yeah.
Well, frankly, then because we're male, sometimes we one up each other, and I actually suffered a serious scrotal tear.
Oh my God.
in my 20s, which left me off my feet for about 6 weeks. So,
Similar time. I took 2 months off.
I thank you for coming on. It's been a privilege to get to know you. Hopefully, we can maintain some kind of a friendship along the way. And if we have any questions from audience or viewer members along the way, I'll shoot you a text or an email and see if you can help us answer them.
Had it before the show goes up, yeah.
Yeah, before the show goes on.
Many people know more than I do. I just know my personal stuff that I've dealt with and my own opinions. So whatever I can help with, I would like to try helping people, but I can't guarantee it'll necessarily be that helpful. A lot of stuff's changed over the years.
So do you have any people in your life right now that are transitioning?
I have a few friends that are.
Like, do you find yourself, like you said, you got a mix of friends, but do you find yourself, because of your situation, I don't say having a club, but having closer ties with people in similar situations?
My closest friends are actually women who are not transitioning. They were born women, raised women. They just happen to have a lot of interest the same as me, and I can relate to them.
Right on.
Fantastic.
Yeah, 'cause I remember you saying you had a mix of friends, nothing
I
in
do.
particular, everything. So I just wasn't sure if it worked just because of the necessity for almost like a counseling and a bonding.
No,
To
no,
an
there
understanding.
was no group counseling.
Like
Alright.
the support group, eh?
Super. Yeah.
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 I never joined any support groups.
Yeah, you know...
Crowds always have made me intimidated, and most support groups were too big of a crowd for me.
This
Okay,
is a small crowd here. You're
So we'll spend maybe 2 more minutes, but because you're mentioning that, I know the incidence of mental health issues and suicide attempts, depression, anxiety disorders are much more prolific in the LGBTQ community.
Well, anybody who's conceived of as different as a teenager will be picked on, will be bullied, will be singled out for
and
some
have a
sort
greater
of
likelihood
negative
for
treatment.
a mental
And
health
therefore, we'll have to find some reason why they keep going when everything around them is being thrown at them negative.
Mhm.
Mine was I wanted to see what was going to happen in the future. I'm a big reader of sci-fi,
Oh,
and I wanted to see how much of those things would come true.
so that in some sense insulated you from mental health problems that's...
Well, it's also part of the reason why I'm a lot of times bad at reading people. I spent most of my teenage years, instead of forming friendships and learning how to deal with people, reading books.
Right.
I walked home reading a book. I walked around the school reading a book.
So that's why you had trouble deciding who's the best looking on this panel.
Yeah. None of us look like a book.
Well, that's part of the reason why I have to know someone's personality and their
for sure.
interests before they become attractive to me.
Yeah.
Because in books, you get to see the interior of a lot of the thoughts of the characters a lot of times. And that is what I got used to being able to see.
Have you thought about writing a book?
Lots of times. I'm a horrible writer.
Well, that's why they have editors.
Yeah, I'm a horrible writer. I tried writing stories, and I got lost in my own story, and I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Well, Frankie, then you may be a horrible writer, but you're a beautiful person, and thank you for being here. I appreciate you just being so vulnerable and sharing your story. We look forward to chatting again, and thanks, guys, for your questions, and cheers to Frankie Lynn. Yeah. Thanks for being part of this episode of The Crew Live. We hope you tune in to thecrewlive.co or facebook.com/thecrewlive where you can subscribe. We'll talk to you all soon on the next session of The Crew Live.